All right. So we had three breakout questions on the table dealing with the visual materials for Black Wall Street. The first one being, what stood out to you most about the material, and what questions do you have about the material? Second one being, why is Black Wall Street not represented in American history, and why is this information important to our contemporary moment? So how does this pertain to what's going on in the world today, and then why are they not talking about it in American history? And then finally, what does the legacy of Black Wall Street say about African people's ability to maintain wealth? So those are our three breakout questions you all discussed for 10 minutes. So who would like to share what was discussed in your breakout groups? Go ahead, Martin.
The Black Wall Street was like one of the wealthiest Black communities in the U.S. And what happened was like 35 blocks were all like looted, burned, and destroyed. And this had a like significant impact on the community, which caused like 10,000 to be homeless. And this was done by the white mob with guns, explosives, and arson. Dated May 31st to May 31st, 1921 to June 1st, 1921. So, yeah.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone else? What stood out to you? What questions did you have about the Black Wall Street material?
Stood out to me.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
What stood out to me was that it wasn't just like an economic powerhouse, but it was also like a cultural and artistic center where like people could express their art and their music in the house or the building, I guess.
That's a good call out, Brian. I think that's something that's not talked about enough. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you. Francisco, were you going to say something?
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
What stood out to me was what shocked me was the aftermath of the whole situation where there was the burning, the looting, the killing of bodies. And after they were all the people that have done that are captured, they were just like released without any like sort of punishment. That just stood out to me.
Yeah, that's a very good call out. Thank you. Perfect. So moving on to question 2, which was, why are we not talking about this in American history, and why is this important for what's going on in our world today?
I think because it's not benefiting like all of America, and it's just benefiting like a one like singular race that majority of everyone sees as like unimportant. They're not going to want to keep talking about it because the first thing they're going to say is like, how does it benefit all of America? And then no one's really going to have a like an actual answer for it. So I think that's why no one really talks about it.
I think you're absolutely right, Imani. But then, so why does it become important for what's going on in 2023? And not only Imani, but anybody could answer or chime in for that.
I think it just like relates back to how a lot of things that have to do with like Black people are overlooked and just swept under the rug, kind of, or not, like as you said, not viewed as important to everyone. So why should we even, bring it up, sort of thing.
Yeah. All right. If anyone doesn't have anything else to chime in, we'll move to question 3. So what does the legacy of Black Wall Street say about African people or Black people's ability to accumulate wealth?
I could go. I think with that question, you look at the history and the prosperity of Black people in general, there was a lot of hidden talents, a lot of jobs out there. And if you're taking a look at the history today for young Black kids, it kind of gives them a pathway to show them that it is possible, right? It is possible to come together and build your resources and, the possibilities are endless. And like we were having in our conversation during our group session, you hear phrases gentrification or buy back the block. They say these things for a reason. So that's my sense on it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Hunter. It's a really good call out. All right. So what I'll do is I'll work my spiel through the breakout questions. There's not like a reading for me to kind of provide deeper insight into. So that's how we'll approach the lecture today, and then from there we'll jump into discussion and breakout groups. Sorry, not breakout groups, fishbowl, excuse me. Always what's like profoundly interesting to me is just the amount of wealth that area had, right? And as I think I may have mentioned this, my maternal side of my family, they're from the Tulsa area. My great-great-grandfather was actually within that center location of Green Street, Archwood, and Pine, which was this epicenter for, oh, thank you, Hunter. Boop, 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 boop. Let me put that on pause. Thank you. I knew I was gonna forget that. That's why I asked you to do that. So I appreciate you, bro. So we had an assignment over the weekend, right? Actually over the last week, and I asked you all not to code switch, and then pay attention to, one, how others around you are responding, and then two, how you feel being your authentic self. So I want to kind of discuss that for those who had a chance to do that assignment. I want to kind of get your insight onto how that felt for you. Anybody like to share?
I could go. With my coworkers, it's nothing new. We're dysfunctional like that. So with them, it's all good. When I'm out in public, I try being myself, not being well-spoken, well-mannered, or what have you. It's kind of, I don't know. It kind of felt good to just not have to worry about that over my shoulder.
Are you Caribbean descendant at all?
My parents are from Trinidad and Tobago.
Like I don't know if it's like the assignment, but I'm hearing like a subtle Caribbean accent in you that I haven't heard before. So I don't, maybe that's part of you not code switching, but you, even like looking at you, your disposition, you seem a lot more comfortable in that chair than what I've seen in the past. And I don't know if that's due to the assignment or not, but that's something that when you first jumped on and I was listening to you, I'm like, man, this cat, like, one, I'm hearing some Caribbean in him that I haven't heard before, but then two, it's obvious the relaxedness in your shoulders and how you're presenting yourself. So and again, I don't know if that's the assignment or not, but I definitely can see a distinction between how you're presenting today and how you have presented in the past.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in LA, but my parents are from Trinidad and Tobago. So I hear that I kind of have an accent. I never really paid attention to it, but
it's real subtle. It's real subtle. But I know some folks from Trinity, so that's why I was able to kind of pick up on it. And then two, one of my favorite ancestors, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, he's also from Trinidad. So that allows me to be a little bit more attentive to that. Dope. Anyone else? The code switching assignment, who else participated in that or had a chance to so far?
I can go. I work in at an arena, so and all the people around me is like different, everyone has like their own different personality. So it's kind of normal for me to, talk how like I usually talk with everyone else. But doing it to people that were like coming as like patrons and stuff was something that I had to do, which was like, and I remember like last minute when I was like, I'm just like busy running around doing stuff. And like last minute, I think I was like, oh yeah, I have that assignment. I was like, maybe I should just try to do it now. So like, for instance, we had WWE down here on Saturday. So like we just had like all these people coming in and they're like everyone's asking questions as I'm rolling around. And I didn't realize that like literally it just kind of just slipped out like how I usually talk to them. I'm like, oh wow, didn't have to use like my professional voice with them, and it was kind of like a comfortable feeling not having to be like, talking comfortable with one person, be like, oh, how may I help you like the next minute. So it was kind of like a cool experiment.
How were the patrons? How did they respond to you?
I mean, they just see it as just like, just a regular person talking. We don't realize that like sometimes people just don't care how you talk to them, just as long as you talk to them respectfully.
Absolutely. And oftentimes, right, that's why every semester I have students do this assignment. You don't realize the pressure you put on yourself to be professional, Oftentimes, it's not even reflected on the populace that you're trying to be a professional around. They don't know no different anyway, right? These are self-inflicted things that we place upon ourselves. Anyone else get a chance to do the assignment? Francisco, you gonna say something?
Oh yeah. Well, for me, well, I try to not code switch with my mom. So when I did with my mom, she like instantly noticed a difference in my voice and how I was like professional, not like how it sound like at home, normally with my mother. So when I told her how I try to sound professional, it gave her it gave her an insight of how I act differently from home,
Yeah,
work, outside, work, school, and things like that.
yeah, yeah. It's
So
definitely
yeah, that's like what.
yeah. That home presentation is a tricky one. Sometimes you have to code switch within home for some people, so that can always be an interesting sight to try to be your authentic self. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Okay. I actually want, wait, can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. I wanted to kind of go backwards. I wanted to talk about how I'm pretty myself all the time, but just with like friends that I've made here in school, let me make sure they're not around. Like they hear me talk when I'm in class or I have a phone call or I'm helping my mom translate and just one of the times when I do switch to that professional side of me and they're like, "Whoa, I didn't know you had that in you." And then I'm like, just because I'm like outgoing and I'm always like, sorry, someone's trying to talk to me.
Oh, no, no, no.
Oh, sorry.
Actually,
Um,
yeah,
I'm in class right now. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry about that. They just kind of take it as in like, oh, well, you're always like the life of the party, so we never thought that you had that side of you. And I'm like, are you my friend? But it's like I can't even think of people that actually see me at work and I'm in that mode all the time and then when they see me out of work they're like, "Oh, you're a different person." So I did kind of reflect on that and I'm like, maybe I should bring myself in more into my job or like yeah, just like in that area where I feel like I have to code myself. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, do
Thank
me a
you.
favor, Alexis. Take some time this week and try to be that person at your job and see how they respond. Right, and we'll circle back on Monday to see how that went for you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else have a chance to do the assignment? So if you have not had a chance to do the assignment, please take some time to do the assignment. I think it's vastly important that you explore the possibilities of being yourself in spaces. I think that's something that we don't really give credit enough. Or do we take enough time to say, yo, who is my authentic self, right? So this kind of plays a dual process in self-discovery, so to speak. And again, if we're thinking about what prompted this assignment is the work of W.E.B. Du Bois and his notion of double consciousness, right? And he says that the only way to do away with this double consciousness is to authenticate our culture, right? To place our culture as intellectual co-workers with the others. So you have to be yourself. So please do that if you have not done so already, and we'll talk about it again next Monday. But thinking about the Black Wall Street, as I mentioned, I have family who descended from that area. This idea of nepotism, so to speak, comes to mind when I think about Black Wall Street in the sense of, doing for your own, right? Making sure those who are closest to you are set up for success. This is this notion of nepotism. And I know oftentimes that it has like a negative connotation, but I don't think it necessarily has to be negative, right? Like I think there's an irresponsible nepotism, you providing people opportunities that don't deserve it. But if you prepare, for example, your children or your loved ones to take over what's yours, then that's, to me, that's productive nepotism. And I think that's what allowed Black Wall Street to be what it was. Another thing that stands out to me is the generative nature of segregation. I'm gonna say that one more time. The generative or productive nature of segregation, right? During the time of Black Wall Street, you had no choice but to shop with your own, but to go to a Black doctor, but to go to a Black restaurant, right? There was no other choice. So when you did get your check, you had no choice but to spend your money with those who look like you. And that fundamental reality is what made Black Wall Street what it was. One of the, in my estimations, one of the biggest missteps of the civil rights movement was the desire to integrate. We fucked up with that. Like, we were doing okay, right? You seen what segregation did for Tulsa, Oklahoma. Soon as we had the ability to spend our money elsewhere, we stopped that process of spending our dollars within our own and start taking our money to support outside entities, right? So those are two things for me that like leaped off of the material, so to speak. Like I just couldn't not process or analyze, right? One, again, the amount of wealth that was accumulated through these notions like nepotism. But then two, the productive and generative nature of segregation, right? It's something to be said about being able to support yourself and do for yourself and having your own to go to for what you need, right? The second question being, why has it not been represented in American history and why is information important today, right? And for me, why it's not talked about in American history. On record, right? Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street was the first domestic bombing ever, right? This is the first time that America sought to bomb Americans, right? And they talk about how they got in their planes and literally dropped bombs on spaces and stores within Black Wall Street, right? That's a vital aspect of American history to just not talk about, right? I want to say maybe 2 to 3 years ago, there was a HBO limited series that came out called, what's the name of that show? The Watchmen is what it's called. I don't know if anybody's seen it, then you know what I'm talking about, but for those who haven't, like the series starts off depicting Black Wall Street and the horrors that ensued the day of Black Wall Street, that the day that the rioting began. Also, that word right is, I'll use that to transition to why it becomes important for what's going on in our world today, right? Think about 2020, the summer of 2020, and the George Floyd protests and rallies that took place, right? And think about the discourse and the conversation that went on around this notion of rioting, right? How the rioters were depicted, how the property that the rioters were destroying, right? How that had more value than the people who were protesting, or more value than the person, George Floyd in this case, that insinuates the protest, right? That kicks the whole protest off, right? So in other words, what I'm trying to get you to understand is they place more value in the buildings than they do in the people, right? And from a historical context, right, what's happening in Tulsa, Oklahoma is vastly different from what's happening in 2020 when people were protesting for George Floyd. What's the difference between the George Floyd protests and the riots that took place that destroyed Black Wall Street? What's the fundamental difference between these two phenomena? What's the difference between the George Floyd protests that were classified as a riot and the actual riot that destroyed Black Wall Street? What's the distinction?
I guess you could say for George Floyd, we were advocating for like a better future and better life. And then for the white mob, it was discrimination against somebody. Like they wanted to destroy it, not help with it.
Absolutely. And with that being said, because you're absolutely right, Brian, right? But to further complicate that, right, let's look at what starts both phenomena, right? we're in the elevator shifts, and because of the elevator shifting, the rider of the elevator bumps into the elevator operator who is white, right? And that is what the impetus for the riot was. That's what started it all, okay? Juxtaposed to someone who is choked to death, someone who placed their knee on the neck of another individual for over 18 minutes until that individual lost his breath, right? And the rage, the justifiable rage that stems from the reproduction, right? And be attentive to how I phrase reproduction, right? Because it's the production of what happened in the moment and what we call media res, right? Was happening while the officer is putting his knee on the neck for over 18 minutes. That's the production, right? But then it gets what? Reproduced over and over and over through the sharing of the videos, right? That's what I mean by when I say the reproduction. And that reproduction produces a rage that causes people to spill out to the streets, right? I believe it was Kwame Ture who said that the protest is the language of the unheard, right? So once I feel like my grievances aren't being heard, then I'm going to take extreme measures to ensure that my displeasure is being witnessed. Burning, tearing down buildings, turning over cars, right? That only happens because my claims and my ask and my requests to be treated like a human have been ignored. So this is what I have left to deal with, right? So to me, this is why this information is important for our contemporary moment, because it recontextualizes how we think about protest. It recontextualizes the language of rioting, right? Because if you listen to me carefully, I haven't even classified what was going on in 2020 as a riot. I classify it as a protest, right? But what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1920s, right, 100 years prior to the George Floyd protests, that is a riot. That's not even a rebellion, right? They're not rebelling against anything. They're rioting against Black wealth. Another thing that came into my mind was the work of Ida B. Wells, who started the anti-lynching movement. And what prompted Ida B. Wells to start the anti-lynching movement was the lynching of her good friend, right? Her good friend was a business owner. And his business, was across the street from, I think he had like a convenience store, right? And his convenience store was across the street from a white owner of a convenience store that sold the same goods. But naturally, Ida B. Wells' friend's business was doing better than the white person's business. And because of this, they attacked him and they burned down his store and they lynched him, right? I bring this up to say, just like in the Tulsa, Oklahoma situation, the false flag that flew was a white woman being assaulted, right? This is why they said they did what they did. But the real reason behind it was economic well-being, right? They had more millionaires in Black Wall Street than America had in the whole nation. More millionaires in this concentrated area than America had in the whole nation, okay? That's the type of economic prowess that they had within this location. They wasn't really mad about old girl getting bumped into, because if you pay close attention, she said, yo, I'm good, nothing happened. Nobody raped me, nobody scarred me up, I'm straight. I don't even want to sign the affidavit saying that something happened to me, because that's not true, right? So they didn't have any real grievance to articulate. The problem was the amount of wealth that these African people amassed. And we can't have that, right? Because to let this be known is to undermine the whole fabric of what we built this on, that these people are inferior to us. You can't be inferior to us and have more money than us in a capitalistic society where money rules everything, right? It's incongruent. Again, this is why this becomes important for our current moment. The legacy of African people to amass wealth. The common understanding, and I don't think it's inaccurate, right? The Black dollar does not circulate one time within the Black community. So what that means, I get my paycheck, right? I go spend my money with Black businesses, so that money circulates within the community, right? So for example, if I get paid, I go to Harlan's business and I give him my money. Harlan takes the money that I get from my business, from me partnering in his business, and he uses that money to go support Ruben, right? And then Ruben uses his money, he goes supports Keelan. Then Keelan uses his money, then he goes supports Imani's business. So that dollar circulated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times within the community, right? So what they're saying is currently that dollar does not even circle one time within the Black community. So once I get paid, the first thing that I do is I go spend my money outside of my community, right? So that eliminates the possibility for it to circle. I don't think I mentioned this before, but I lived in East Los when I was doing my undergrad, right, off of Breed and 4th Street. And one thing I noticed, one thing I noticed about Breed and 4th Street, you don't really have to leave that community for anything that you need. You don't have to go outside of East Los to get anything that you need, right? That the dollar in that community circulates several times over, right? So for me, knowing that there was a historical point, there's a historical juncture where African people were able to spread their wealth so much over that they were more millionaires in this one concentrated area than there were in the whole nation, lets me know that it's not that we don't have the ability to amass wealth. It's not that we don't have the knowledge or the capacity to circulate our dollar, right? There's social forces at play that eliminates us or prevents us from doing so, right? In fact, history tells us that when we do accumulate a large amount of wealth, opposing forces will come in and bomb us, right? So the question really becomes not about the ability to amass wealth, but the ability to secure wealth and the ability to protect yourself once you've amassed the wealth, right? So for me, what this shows is, and I don't think we have to look too far into history to know that African people get money, right? We have examples of these Black capitalists, right? The Jay-Z's, the Oprahs of the world, right? But the question becomes, what are you doing with that money to help support Black folks? And then can you maintain that money under your own gumption, under your own agency, right? Without having to capitulate to the dominant culture. So I'll put a pause on my lecture and we'll open up for the fishbowl. You could talk about what was discussed here. You could talk about what's discussed in your breakout groups, or you could talk about anything you pulled from the video of importance. Does anyone want to volunteer? We have to go twice per semester. You have 1 time to pass. Any volunteers? If not, I'll call at random. 1 more chance for volunteers. All right, bet. Ruben, are you prepared to fishbowl today? Yeah, thank you, Ruben. Let's see who else. Olivia, are you prepared to fishbowl today?
Yeah, I can, but I already did it twice.
Twice? I thought so. Okay, don't worry about it. I'm gonna try to find some. Kelly, are you prepared to fishbowl today?
I already did it twice.
Twice, okay. Alexis, are you prepared to fishbowl today?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and then we'll get 1 more. Brian, are you prepared to fishbowl today?
I already went twice, but I could
Okay.
go again.
No worries, no worries, no worries. Francisco, are you prepared to fishbowl? You went twice too already, though, haven't you?
Yeah, I already went twice and 1.
Yeah. All right, cool. No worries, bro. Let's see. Imani, have you gone twice already? All right. Oh shit. I think we'll just go with 2 because I think everybody else is pretty much up there on our fishbowl. So we'll just go with these 2. We'll go with Ruben and Alexis.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the Black Wall Street questions. And I think part of the reason why we don't hear about it a lot is because it it doesn't go well with America's bottom line. America's about making money. It's a business, and Black people are a big contributor in that. So if they tell us that at one point in time, a point in time where we had less technology than we do now, that we had more billionaires than all the other white people in the entire nation, that probably wouldn't lead to us spending money with them. It might lead to us having more conversations like this and trying to find ways to actually spend money circulated between our own businesses and stuff. So that's pretty much, like the bottom reason why it's not being taught. And of course, they don't want you to look at white men a certain way. They bombed an entire city. They killed a whole lot of people just because they were more successful in it. So it's kind of of white insecurity, white guilt. You kind of get these types of actions and stuff like that. So they don't want to put themselves in a bad light, because then, of course, you wouldn't listen to them, you wouldn't abide by their laws. You pretty much wouldn't give a fuck about them. And we try to do everything you could to separate yourselves from that type of environment which we sort of live in right now. So that kind of stuck out to me a lot. It kind of sucks that people don't read about it, because then we could actually, like, you wouldn't want to be a rapper or athlete. You want to be a lawyer or a businessman or own an airport or something like that, because you've seen people do it before, and that's kind of the path to financial freedom amongst certain people. But yeah, that's kind of my take.
Yeah. I like that, Ruben, the idea that it expands the possibilities for success beyond entertainment, right? And I think one of the reasons why we look for that, one, it's safe, right? Like, ain't nobody really tripping on rappers. You can say whatever the fuck you want. That's going to degrade your people, and you'll get your money and you'll be cool, right? Ain't nobody tripping about dancers or actors. They're gonna, as long as you keep white folks smiling, you'll be safe, right? But once you start to threaten the social order by being intellectual even, then you begin to pose a threat. So I think that's a very good call out. Alexis?
So in my group, I did speak up on how it's a subject that is not touched upon in school, in history class. If it is, it's just a day or it's just mentioned, but we never go deep into what actually happened. And this is actually my first time really hearing about the Black Wall Street. And so just hearing and seeing everything that went on, I drew a lot of connections to today's to present day, and it's seen in our communities how they're being gentrified. It's seen in the protest movements that we have done, like George Floyd. And I did want to talk about how they don't want to speak upon this Black Wall Street riot that these white people have done, because like my I forgot his name, I'm sorry, like how he just talked about, it's not a good look for America. It's not a good look for the white men that we should look up to, that are wealthier than our people that are inferior. So I feel like it's just the envy of having these people that are seen as inferior being able to be successful, having the knowledge that they can run their business, they can run their own communities, they can have millionaires in their communities. And I feel like that does talk about today's society. Like I grew up in Highland Park, and it was always a community of Hispanic Latin community, and all the businesses were Latino owned, schools were Hispanic based. I mean, I grew up with that, and then I'm still in that community, and it's so different, and it makes you feel like it's not that community anymore. And the people that live there now, they're white folks, and they look at you like you're inferior. And I'm like, hey, my family has lived in this house for decades. And that just speaks upon how when we act out, when we're not heard, we're seen as they're destroying property, they're rioting stores, they're a threat to the community, they're a threat to America. And then we get all of these, go back to your country. We get all of these stereotypical signs, and that's what happened in Black Wall Street, except it wasn't talked about. And it was worse because, like you said, it was a riot. It was a rage, a bad act. And yeah, that's what I got from today's film. So thank you.
So thank you both. Really, really good fish bowls, really insightful. So for Wednesday, we will pick up with the videos. For Wednesday's material, we'll be discussing another act of American terrorism. Instead, it's a little bit more contemporary. This is going to be in the late 1980s in Philadelphia. The movement, John Africa, and how they were destroyed and obliterated by American. I think Ruben said it very profoundly, right? By white insecurity, right? This is really what all of these things stem from. So please watch that. Come prepared to discuss with that on Wednesday. We're going to end class a little early today. Other than that, you guys have a good rest of your day. Travel well, be healthy, be safe, be wise, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one.